So good evening all. First of all, thanks to all for coming up over here and to discuss a few aspects of audit and a few aspects of accounting and all. So thanks for your time. And we'll try our best to make sure that whatever time you are putting over here, that would be like some learning would be there. You'll be learning some new things, and that will be helping you throughout your life and in your basically professional life. So now I'll begin with the session for today. As we know, we'll be continuing this in this 19 the employee benefit thing today, and we discussed a bit of it in the previous session related to the gratuity thing, what all assumption an actuarial takes, and how numbers are being computed, what all we have to check, what all assumptions we have to, or what are the sources from where we have to vet those assumptions, and how those assumption impacts the numbers which are bifurcated among, say, current service cost, interest cost, or say actual gain and losses. So all those things we have discussed in the previous session. Today we'll be continuing it further, and so I'll start with the portion where we left in the last session. Okay. Yeah. So we have covered this thing in the last session, but in hurry, related to the fair value of the plan assets. So I'll just take you guys through this. So the plan asset thing, when we talk about, as we already discussed, like there could be two instances. One where there are plan assets. One there is no plan asset altogether. So the entity which is not having any plan asset, they are totally basically taking pure risk in terms of, it might happen they won't be able to pay off the liabilities on account of gratuity or leave encashment when the people will separate, employees will separate. So there's a huge risk. To avoid that risk, companies go for the plan assets scenario, where they put certain amount every year in a pool of fund, and they invest those amounts into different instruments to earn money on those contributions. So to basically make sure whenever the liability comes up, they have enough or ample amount of cash with them to pay off the liabilities. This is the whole concept of the fair value, as to what's the reason for keeping this plan assets in place basically.
अच्छा ऋषु, वन सेकंड। आवाज सबको क्लियर आ रहा है क्या? मतलब मेरे को बहुत धीमा आ रहा है एक्चुअली।
Now, is it clear now?
Yes,
नाउ इट
yes.
इज क्लियर, बट प्रीवियसली इट वाज कमिंग
Okay.
वेरी लो।
Okay.
हाँ, यू
Okay.
कैन स्टार्ट फ्रॉम द बिगिनिंग, आई थिंक सो ऋषु।
Okay, no issues. So, guys, from here we'll go get into the table of fair value of plan assets. Basically, we were discussing this actuarial report of one of the clients which we are having. So, basically, if you see this table of plan assets, the first thing in the table is the opening balance. As we all know, for any balance sheet item, there's opening balance, there's closing balance, and there's a movement in between. So, we are having the opening balances. This interest income we have already discussed in the previous session, that the actuary assumes a certain rate of interest which is supposed to earn on the contribution or the pool of amount which is kept by the entity. So this amount comes from there. We have seen in the assumptions that they have basically assumed a certain percentage for computing this interest income basis which they computed. So I asked you people to multiply that percentage with the opening balance. Even you guys can do this as of now only. So I'll just give you the percentage. So if you see the expected return on the plan assets in the assumption, it is 6.90%. So if you'll multiply this percentage to the opening balance, the current year interest income will be coming. So this is how this particular thing is computed over here. Then moving further, if you move further, basically then we'll see the contribution by the employer. This is the fresh amount which the employer is basically keeping aside in this particular year. During this particular year, certain contribution is being added by the employer. Can anyone tell me why fresh contributions are made by the employer? Why we exactly need to contribute? Can anyone tell me, please?
There will be new employees coming
Okay.
due to inflation.
Okay, not truly about inflation, but uh, first point of yours was right, Harsh, that due to new employees, it could be the reason. Moreover, even if when the services of the employees, the service period, the period for which employee has served to you increases, obviously your contribution also needs to be added because your liability is increasing. Correct. When your liability is increasing, to make sure that you'll be able to pay off that liability, so you have to add contribution too. That is why we used to we basically employer are supposed to contribute every year in line with the liabilities. Basically, they have to figure out how much amount they want to keep or contribute to the funds. So it might happen there are some in some of the countries there are regulations which talks about how much percentage or how much amount you have to basically invest or contribute. But I believe in India there is no such statutory requirement where it is specified that certain percentage is required or certain amount is required. So it is totally the discretion of the company who decided which decided how much amount they have to contribute. So basically it is primarily it is on account of them. If I talk about the major chunk, it is on account of the service period enhancement. Because if say for example up till previous year someone has worked for 10 years, one more year of service he has given to you in this current year, so obviously 1 year additional liability will be there to basically make sure to pay you'll be able to pay off that additional component also. You have to contribute. That is why we contribute over here. Then we have talked about this asset transfer in and this asset transfer out. This is basically this happens when acquisition or divestment, those things happens basically when you spin off any division or basically you acquire any division. Then you simply have to assume the liability or the asset of those assets of those entities which you have absorbed. And in case of if you have divested, obviously you need to pull it off from your books of accounts, and accordingly you'll deduct from here. The benefit paid, can anyone tell me, can I match this number anywhere, like from any other table in this particular certificate? Is this number basically, is cross verification possible for this particular number, benefit paid from the fund? Guys, we have already discussed this. So I believe you guys must be aware, like this number must be flowing somewhere else also in this report.
Uh, I don't know the answer, but maybe from the PNL.
Harsh, why PNL basically?
It
Indirectly
is,
it will have an impact on my P&L number, but how come you can say like in P&L? Because if you are making any payment, to the best of my knowledge, your P&L won't hit, right? If you are making any payment to any party, think of how what will be the entry. You'll be basically debiting the liability, either vendor or employee, and you'll be crediting the bank account. So there is no impact in the P&L altogether, is it? Am I right? Hmm? Harsh, if I'm wrong, please question me.
no, no.
Okay, yeah. So basically, this number you can cross verify from the liability statement in this certificate itself. So basically, when you have paid certain amount, obviously that much amount of your liability should also reduce. So if you can see over here, this amount is there. So when you paid the amount, obviously it will reduce your liability as well as your asset, because that amount is flowing, getting paid from the fund assets which you have parked, the fund contribution which you have parked. So obviously this number should match. This in any case won't differ. Okay, so this is how you can match from there. Okay, I hope it is clear. Then asset disbursed on settlements. This happens when basically a settlement scheme is entered with the employees. It is very rare, so I won't get into this. The other one is the expenses and tax for managing the benefit obligation paid from the fund. So if there are, say, for example, any expenses incurred in meeting the compliances, like when you are paying the funds, if any regulatory reporting is required, and any tax basically tax services you have taken, obviously you have to pay that amount to the consultant. So that much amount gets reduced from here. So in foreign countries it happens like, so whenever they have such huge funds, they have the fund managers basically who provides all the services, basically investing the money and moreover the legal compliances also. So all those amount get captured over here basically. So that is what they have mentioned over here. Then the effect of asset ceiling. Last time someone questioned this, and I basically parked this question for later session. So I'll be discussing this aspect today in depth. So let's get into this particular thing. Anyone having any idea about asset ceiling? Anyone? What exactly the name reflects? Anyone can make any sense out of it? Guys, anyone having any idea? Yes or no? No will also work.
No idea.
No idea. Okay, great. No issues. So let's dive into this. Uh, Give me a second. Yeah, is it visible?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. One second. Yeah. So basically, the asset ceiling concept is there to make sure. So basically, what happens whenever your asset is basically getting increased, it might happen when you have the contributions in place, when you have that huge pool of assets with you, the amount of those assets might exceed the liability. Correct, it might happen the contribution which you are making, it is getting increased as comparative to my liability. Okay, it might happen. So in order to make sure, there's a para in the standard which specifically says whenever there is a surplus, okay, that is your assets are exceeding your liability. So say for example, my total liability computed by the actuarial is coming out 1 lakh rupees, whereas the assets which I have contributed is coming out to be 1 lakh 20,000. That might be on account of the capital market appreciation and the basically the increase in the valuation of the assets. So ultimately, what's happening, against 1 lakh, I have 1 lakh 20,000 as the asset, and accordingly, I have a surplus of 20 lakhs. So this 20 lakhs will be flowing to my balance sheet, right? Are you guys agreeing with me on the statement that the 20 lakh, which is your asset, will flow to your balance sheet? Correct?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So the point is, when this 20 lakh will flow to your balance sheet, the standard says what all, basically, if you are flowing any number in the category of asset in your balance sheet, there are few requirements that this particular asset which you are booking in your books of accounts, which you are recognizing in your balance sheet, you must be having control over it. Okay. So do you think this 20 lakh rupees, which is sorry, 20,000 rupees, which is in excess of my liability, is something which is being controlled by the employer? So it might happen that the in this as per the statutory requirement or the law which is prevailing in your country, it might say that any surplus will belong to the employees. That is, the employer won't be having any right over the surplus. So whenever you won't having any right over the surplus, obviously you are not supposed to recognize that surplus into your books of accounts in your balance sheet. Okay, so whenever any statutory requirement is there which restricts the surplus utilization by the employer, that is, the employer is not supposed to avail benefit of it, because the employer can avail benefit in two terms: either by taking out the cash which is lying there, or either by reducing its contribution in the future. So if, say for example, if none of these situation is allowed, then obviously, because you are not having any control, you are not supposed to float the asset number into your balance sheet. This is why the asset ceiling concept is there. So it totally depends upon the statutory regulations in prevailing in the country where you are preparing your financials. So if that law asks you, or basically mandates, that you are not supposed to show surplus because the surplus relates to employees, in that case you need to present only net zero amount in your balance sheet, because you don't have any control. So that is what I have discussed over here. In case of asset ceiling, there there could be two instances. It could reduce your pension assets. Okay, because what was happening in my scenario, I was talking about 1 lakh 20,000 of the asset, but ultimately it is reducing my asset impact to 1 lakh rupees. It is restricting my assets to 1 lakh only, and I am forcefully required to present zero amount of net assets in my books of accounts, because I, being the entity, don't have any control. So that is what we have discussed over here. For example, if a pension scheme has the asset of 120 rupees, okay, and the value of the present value of obligation is 100 rupees, and the scheme rules state that any surplus belongs to the scheme members. So it basically depends upon the statutory requirement or the way you have constructed your basically trust. If you have mentioned in the trust deed that this surplus will relate to employees, and employer in no case can basically pull that cash off, or basis this can reduce this amount, their contribution. If that is the case, then the pension disclosure in the notes would be like this: as we mentioned in the as it is mentioned in the example, that the fair value of the scheme assets is 120, and the present value of the PVO of was 100 rupee. So net surplus was 20. Correct? If you compute this, obviously you will be reaching out to the statement that net I have the asset of 20 rupees. Correct? But as the scheme which is being drafted for this particular fund says that the surplus basically belongs to the scheme members. Scheme members are the employees. So accordingly, being the employer, you don't have any control over that amount. Accordingly, as per the accounting standard, you're not supposed to disclose this 20 rupees in your balance sheet. That is why the asset ceiling adjustment will be there, and you will be reducing this amount by 20. because this whole of 20 belongs to employees. If say for example there was a there's a law, in the scheme it is mentioned that 10 lakh rupees of the surplus will in this case instead of 10 lakh we'll keep it like this. If 10 rupees of the surplus relates to employees and any surplus beyond 10 is basically under the control of employer, in that case what will happen, this will be 20 only, but while adjusting the asset ceiling we'll be reducing only 10. Okay, because as per the scheme only 10 rupees of the surplus is relates to employees and rest relates to employer. But in this case, as the scheme mentioned that no amount relates to employer, accordingly in the balance sheet the pension asset which will be reflecting would be zero. Any doubt on this particular aspect, guys? If you have doubt, please let
So,
me know.
so I have a
Please.
so we aren't going
Hmm.
we aren't going to show it in the balance sheet. So how come the employees will come to know that this amount has been invested in the scheme assets? So we will be getting some statement or
Yes. Because look what's happening. This trust or this scheme which is floating, it's basically totally transparent. Every time you have to present the disclosure, we'll be seeing as to where the amount is parked. You have to basically show the amount also. Every year you have to present the disclosure related to the amounts and all, because ultimately the trust or the basically these are trusts only. So these trusts which are being floated works in the fiduciary capacity. So they have the legal obligation to make sure that all the disclosures and the amount is not misappropriated as per the desire of the employer. They have to basically work in the benefit or the interest of the employees. That is the scheme members. Okay, so this disclosure and all is obviously there. So every time they'll be having the data with them.
and in you will be giving disclosure of this also.
Yeah,
In
yeah. I'll show it to you,
showing
Harsh.
this,
Mhm.
Hmm.
Yeah, go ahead, Harsh, if you have any doubt further.
I was asking that only in notes to accounts we will
Mhm.
be showing this amount asset ceiling adjustment,
Yes,
right?
yes, yes,
So
yes.
the statement also the shareholders or financials they will come to know that this amount has been invested in excess,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm. Anyone having any doubt? Other like,
इस अमाउंट का नेट अकाउंट में डिस्क्लोज करो
mm-hmm. क्या Ishan?
तो इस अमाउंट को बस नोट्स टू अकाउंट्स में डिस्क्लोज कर देंगे
Notes to accounts में disclose करोगे and accordingly your balance sheet number is also getting impacted ना. So that
ठीक
you
है
can see that your balance sheet asset is going will be reflecting as zero.
ठीक है सर
Mm. Okay. Anyone having any other doubt? I'll show it to you, Harsh and Nishant, basically how this representation or the disclosure is made. Okay, but this basically this whole scheme or the trust or the fund basically works in the benefit of the employees. So any client if you are working on and they have the funds or the trust over there, they'll be working for the benefit of employees. Okay, so they'll be having trustees over there who will be from the employees only, will be taking care of the all the disclosure requirements so that no manipulation is going on. Basically no manipulation can be done by the employer to make sure all those stuff. Okay. If you guys don't have any doubt on the first instance, I'll move on to the second one. Okay, so the first instance was reducing the pension asset. In this case, we were having uh, assets exceeding the liabilities, whereas the other instance could be the asset is not exceeding my liability, but my net asset will get impacted. We'll see how. So increasing the size of the pension liability, we will be going through this. Now the example is like this: assume a company has a scheme asset of 80 rupees. Okay, now the asset is of 80, whereas the present benefit obligation is of 140. How much gap is there? Guys, please answer.
60.
60 is on lower side, correct? So the asset amount is on lower side, right? Okay. Now this is what basically known as the funding deficit. So there's a funding deficit of 60 to which the company has agreed, look, this 60 I'm not going to pay in single go. I'll be paying it over the period of 3 years. That is 20 rupees per year. Okay, we are fine with it because they are not supposed to. as I mentioned, there are no hard rules altogether as to this much amount you have to mention, you have to contribute every year. So it is basically it depends upon the discretion of the company as to how much amount they want to contribute. So moving further, as per the discussion, like they agreed for 20 rupees per year. The scheme rule states that recovery payments cannot be avoided once committed. Up scheme के rules में they have mentioned if they have committed this contribution of 20 rupees, okay, they can't avoid once committed, even though my asset exceed liability, then also they have to contribute because they have committed. Okay, this what scheme says. So it is basically restricting the advantage to the employer to reduce its contribution in the future. Even if my asset will increase, say for example, the valuation of the asset which is 80 over here, it went up to 120, but still as you have committed, you will have to contribute. You will have to contribute because you have committed. So there is no benefit to the employer in terms of reduced contribution. Okay, guys. So this is the implication of this line. Moving further, any scheme surplus belongs to the scheme members. Okay, so the whole of surplus will relate to the scheme members. So this is the whole scenario. Now what happens? A year later, the pension deficit falls to 30. यहाँ पे pension deficit, how much was the pension deficit? Was 60. Now they are saying this is reduced to 30. This 30 must be on account of 20 rupees must be related to what? 20 rupees must be related to the contribution. Correct. Okay, so basically the liability they have assumed to be intact after 1 year also. They have assumed to be 140. So they have contributed 20 rupees. Now this scheme asset has increased from 80 to 100 rupees. But they are saying the deficit is only 30 because 10 rupees has increased on account of the capital appreciation. So effectively my asset is 110. 20 rupees is on account of the new contribution and 10 rupees on account of the capital appreciation. That is why you could see that effectively your deficit will fall down to 30 as a scheme asset increased in the value. As I mentioned, the capital appreciation has happened, and also because the company has made its first recovery payment, because company has also contributed over and above that. So these two reasons led to basically the effective contribution of 30 instead of 20. Okay, but the company is still committed to making the remaining recovery of 40. Okay, the company is still required to basically contribute to the 40 amount, 40 rupees amount. So the scenario would look like this. The fair value of the scheme assets is 110. The present value of the obligation is 140. This 110, I believe now you guys are clear. Like 80 rupees on account of the previous balance and 20 rupees the fresh contribution, 10 rupees on account of the capital appreciation. So 118 and the liability was 140. The scheme deficit is of 30. Correct. Now this scheme deficit is of 30. So basically, as you have to make sure this they have basically they have the surplus which is there, this is the surplus is only of 10. Okay, because the capital appreciation which has happened, that is of 10 only. So that surplus amount will get reduced from here, that through this asset ceiling adjustment, and your effectively your pension asset on the balance sheet, that is your pension liability, will come out to 40 rupees in negative, because your the asset which has increased was 10 only, the surplus amount. So that surplus amount relates to whom? The employees. Accordingly that does not relate to your employer. So accordingly दिख तो रहा था 30 रुपए का लाइबिलिटी, बट इफेक्टिवली है कितने का? 40 रुपए का, बिकॉज जो 10 रुपए आप इसमें रिड्यूस कर रहे हो, दैट यू आर नॉट सपोज टू डू, बिकॉज दैट सरप्लस रिलेट्स टू एम्प्लॉइज. दैट इज द कंसेप्ट ऑफ असेट सीलिंग. Anyone having doubt on this particular scenario?
So, I have a query.
Mhm.
So in the second statement, you told that the company cannot avoid its commitment. So it is
Exactly.
for the limited period of time, like for the 3 years or for as long the scheme is continued.
For 3 years, because as of now they have committed only 60 rupees that they'll contribute 20 years per year. So after the expiry of third year, then they'll be free. If they want to contribute, they can. If they don't, if they, don't want, they are not bounded to pay, basically to contribute.
But after that, if they want to contribute, then they cannot back off. Like it is then once committed again.
Yes,
So
yes,
we
yes,
have
yes,
to.
yes, yes.
And
Hmm.
okay. And the here it is written that 20 per year. So if they have liberty to keep it 15 per year, is there any bounding in the
They
uh,
could, they can do this 15 per year. As I mentioned, there is no hard rule. Okay, to the best of my knowledge, in India especially, other countries I'm not pretty sure, but in India, to the best of my knowledge, there is no hard rule which asks you to contribute the specific amount. Okay, so it's totally up to the liberty of the company. Say for example, if company is having some good capital projects initiatives or capital intensive projects initiatives lined up in the next year. Obviously, they won't contribute. They'll try to flow the fund towards that capital appreciation expansion plans. Okay, instead of putting the money over here. Okay, so it's totally the liberty of the company. Anyone having any other doubt?
And so one more that in these
Mhm.
scheme assets, they have liberty to put to invest money anywhere, like in stocks or in
We'll see this
real
aspect also,
estate.
Harsh. We'll see this aspect also, Harsh. Give me some time. I'll show you guys the practical aspect. Okay. Anyone having any doubt? Okay, so I believe we have spent a good amount of time on asset ceiling, and this was a very crucial, basically, understanding which one requires. Okay, now moving further. So all these elements we have discussed in depth. The next one is the effect of changes in the forex exchange rate. It is on account if, say, for example, you have invested money elsewhere outside your own reporting currency, basically, or the functional currency. So then only this will come into the picture. But mostly it happens that the contributions or the investments are limited to the country itself in which the company is operating. Okay, so hardly you will find this. Moving further, this is return on plan assets excluding interest income, which we have discussed in the last session also. Why it is written like this? Return on plan assets excluding interest income. Because any asset can basically fetch you two things. One, your interest component. The other is the capital appreciation. So the interest component is obviously covered over here. So whatever left is on account of the capital appreciation, that is what we are keeping over here. That is the basically the increase in the valuation of the assets. So this is how your movement will occur. Obviously movement will be on account of नया पैसा डाला आपने, इंटरेस्ट कमाया आपने, आपने पैसा पे कर दिया क्या, उसको रिड्यूस कर दीजिए. एंड ऑब्वियसली अगर रिटर्न कुछ आया कैपिटल अप्रिसिएशन के अकाउंट पे तो उसको ऐड कर दीजिए. दिस इज हाउ द मूवमेंट विल कम एंड अकॉर्डिंगली यू विल रीच आउट टू योर क्लोजिंग बैलेंस. एनीवन हैविंग एनी डाउट ऑन दिस टेबल?
जो ये कैपिटल अप्रिसिएशन वाला है वो तो असेट सीलिंग में आना. कैपिटल अप्रिसिएशन वाला पण जो रिटर्न
हाँ
ऑन
हाँ
प्लान
हाँ.
एसेट्स है वो असेट सीलिंग में आना चाहिए ना.
असेट सीलिंग में तब आएगा हर्ष जब आपकी स्कीम उस तरीके से ड्राफ्ट हो. इफ यू हैव नॉट ड्राफ्टेड द स्कीम इन दैट वे, दैट इज व्हाई आई एम सेइंग इट इज नॉट समथिंग, इट इज टोटली डिपेंड अपॉन द स्कीम ड्राफ्टिंग, basically the trust deed which you have drafted, and the statutory requirement. If there is any statutory requirement, then only asset ceiling will come there. So in the standard it is written basically when you have the when you don't have the leverage to avail benefit of reduced contribution, and you don't have the benefit to pull out the cash. It might happen this company must be having the flexibility to pull out the cash if whenever they'll be feeling we have huge amount of cash. But in this case asset ceiling won't is not there because they have not drafted the scheme in that way. Okay.
This amount is of the employer. They can show off in the balance sheet.
Exactly, because there is no mention in the scheme that the surplus will relate to this particular the employees only. Okay. Had it been the scenario that they have drafted the scheme like that, obviously, then asset ceiling concept would have come into the picture. We'll see if there's asset ceiling in the balance sheet. May, ha, we'll see, Khushi, where it will come. Obviously, we'll see that. Anyone having any doubt on this table, or else I'll move forward then. Okay, guys. So up till now, we have understood the liability, the asset. Now moving on further. If you have understood these two tables, you are done. You are done. Now it's just the classification into different statements of financial statements. Okay, be it balance sheet, be it P&L. If you have understood these two tables, you are done. Seriously, you are done. You'll see the magic over here now. Now, if you guys see the amount recognized in the balance sheet, as Kushi was asking where in the balance sheet it will come, we'll see. So the present obligation, if you guys scroll it up, I'll take you guys up. The total liability at the end of the period was 475,095 something. Okay, the same amount must be flowing over here. See, 475,095, right? Then the plan assets was 47604, 47604, 47604. These two amount has come. Funded status surplus deficit. Now, if you could see, my liability was 475. Asset which I'm having is 470. Obviously, I'm into deficit. So there's a deficit. Accordingly, net liability needs to be recognized in the balance sheet. Had it been the scenario that my asset was higher than my liability, this should have changed, and this should be the net asset recognized in the balance sheet. But in this scenario, as the liability is on a higher side and the asset is on the lower side, obviously you will be having net liability which you will be showing in the balance sheet. Is it clear, guys? So the balance sheet disclosure is like this. We'll see in particular line item where it is blocked. But as of now, this is the amount which you will be recognizing in the balance sheet. Anyone having any doubt as to what amount will be shown in the balance sheet? Because we have recognized this amount. This is net liability and net assets, and the net of those, whatever, either it is surplus or deficit. If it is deficit, it will flow to my liability. If it is surplus, it will flow to my asset thing. Okay, guys. Hope there is no query on this because it is quite simple. As I mentioned, if you have understood those tables, you are done. Then net interest cost for the current period. Why net interest cost? As to why they have mentioned net. Okay, we'll see. Now they are saying the present value obligation at the end of the at the beginning of the period was 453. That's very much right. We can see that from the top. The fair value of the plan asset was this, and ultimately the net liability was 48979. Okay. Now on this, if you guys scroll it up further, if you guys move ahead, sorry, move upward, you'll see that in the case of liability, when we basically done the unwinding, जब हम लोग इस liability को push करके future में लेके गए, when we pushed it to next year, then obviously we were supposed to recognize the interest cost. This interest cost must be flowing there, 31088. Guys, just yeah, 31088. This is your interest cost. This is interest cost by because your liability is getting increased. Okay, guys. Now there is another item, interest income. Can anyone tell me from where this income must be coming? Guys, please answer. Hello. It's very easy, guys. You must be knowing. Just please
So,
try. Hmm.
so maybe the assets that get the
Exactly. Exactly, Harsh. So if you guys go up and in the interest income, you could see 27,728. So now you have two components. One is your interest expense, 27,728. This was the amount. Okay. So one component is related to pushing of the liability to the next year. That is unwinding it. So accordingly, it is your cost. And interest income, which is on your plan assets, that was assumed by the actuarial, that is there. So your net interest cost for the period is 3359994. That is net of these two. Anyone having any doubt on this? Okay, great. No doubts. So this is net interest cost income. Okay, net interest cost, sorry, which will flow to your financial this basically financing charges basically that will flow there instead of your employee benefit. We'll see this aspect also. Okay, I hope up till now everything is clear. Moving further, the statement says expenses recognized in the statement of profit and loss for the current period. What all expenses they have recognized? Current service cost. Anyone can help me in making me understand what this current service cost mean? We have discussed this in the previous session. Guys, was the previous session that bad that you could not even recall the current service cost? Aman, this shows that we have to work a lot now. एम्प्लॉय ने 1 साल का काम किया इसकी करेक्ट ईशान as you mentioned like this is the addition to my liability due to one more year of working of the employee. That is, last year he has worked for 10 years, now he has worked for one more year, obviously he'll be getting benefit of the 11 years. So that 1 year contribution is something that the liability increased on account of that 1 year of service flows over here. Okay, then your interest cost, obviously this we have seen up over here. This current service cost, obviously you'll be finding it in which of the table from the top. Guys, please tell in which table this was flowing. In the funded assets table or the liability table? Where was it?
liability table.
Exactly. So this was coming under the liability. If you guys want, I can scroll it up and show you guys. Yep. Current service cost 27,511,608. So as I told, like if you understood these two table, you are done. It's not just the classification or the bifurcation into different aspects. So the current service cost and net interest income is the total amount which they have recognized in the P&L. But there were other elements also, right? There were other elements on account of what? On account of my these OCI components. Where are these? Where these will get recognized? What about this one? as I mentioned, as Harsh was mentioning that this will impact the P&L. Obviously, this is a payment. This won't impact my P&L. That is why we are not recognizing it. Okay, so that is why we are not taking it there. This actuarial gain and losses, this will go to OCI. That is why the actuarial has not shown that this amount over there. So we'll see this amount must be flowing somewhere in the below tables. Okay, then obviously this again is the contribution. This contribution and all has nothing to do with the balance sheet, because if you are putting money into, sorry, this has nothing to do with the P&L, because if you are putting money into, your asset will increase, there won't be any impact in the P&L. That is why this amount is not taken there. Accordingly, whenever there is any increase in the value of the asset, that won't impact your P&L altogether basically. So we'll see basically how this happens. Now moving further, this we have discussed. Now, expenses recognized in the OCI for the current year. What expenses they have recognized? They have recognized the actuarial gains losses obligation for the period. This total 11,567.55. From where this must be flowing, guys?
Liability table.
Hmm?
Liability.
Exactly. So in liability table, we are having these two components, okay, which are parked under the category of actuarial gains and losses. So these, if you'll sum up these two, obviously you'll be coming out with that number, which is mentioned there in the OCI table. This number is 11,560. This will be the total of those two components. The third is the return on plan assets. So any movement in the asset valuation is covered under the OCI, not to the PNL. Okay, guys. Always remember, only interest cost is something which is hitting my PNL, whereas the movement in the asset is taken to the OCI thing. Okay, so that element which was increased in my fair value of the assets, this particular amount is taken to the OCI. So as you could see, all the amounts except the contribution and the liability paid off either are parked to the PNL or OCI component. So we have seen, as we just a quick overview, interest cost. Can you guys tell me where it was flowing? Quickly, guys. Interest cost, please, please, please.
PNL.
Hmm? PNL. Okay, great.
PNL. PNL.
Yes. Current service cost.
PNL.
Great. Then this benefit paid.
Cash and
PNL.
bank.
PNL.
Cash and bank.
Exactly. Cash and bank. That will be there. So it is not impacting my PNL. Okay. This actuarial.
Benefits
Hmm?
paid.
Hmm.
अच्छा वो PNL से तो एंट्री होके पे करते हैं.
Hmm? क्या?
ठीक है सर ठीक है.
Actuarial gains and losses.
OCI. OCI.
OCI.
Great. And similarly, if interest income,
PNL.
PNL.
contribution by the employer,
Um,
contribution by the employer.
Should be the cash. Cash and bank will be affected.
Hmm. So basically, no impact on the P&L. Okay, neither OCI. This benefit paid,
Cash and bank.
Cash and bank.
same, no impact on the P&L, neither OCI. This return on plan assets,
OCI.
great.
Return on plan.
So we have seen all the elements as to where all these elements will flow in my P&L, OCI, or balance sheet, where it will impact. Okay, guys. Now I hope, basis those two tables, you should be totally clear as to which amount will go where, which amount will go where. If you are clear on that aspect, you are done. There's nothing. There's nothing. So if you see, this we have covered. OCI we have covered also. So your PNL bit is closed. OCI and the PNL thing is the only amounts which will be reflecting in the statement of profit and loss. Now, as we left the contribution paid or the amount, the liability paid off, these two amounts, OCI की entry बताओ. Okay, give me a second. Give me a second. OCI का entry क्या होगा? खुशी, you yourself try. OCI का entry पहले try करो खुद. If there's a gain, what entry will be there? Try it ना. क्यों नहीं आता? You know the journal entry thing. If there is an income, how are you going to recognize that income? OCI credit. Okay. What will be debited? Think of it. What will be debited? How that income is impacting? That is reducing my liability. Correct. So my liability will get debited. Actuarial gain debited. Kushi, if there is a gain, how can you debit it?
Sir, will can asset debited?
No.
Asset is
Why asset, Harsh? You are not increasing your asset. Rather, The actuarial gain which is there, you guys have to see this table again. If there's a gain, what is happening? Khushi, please tell me. If there's a gain, how it is impacting? It is decreasing my liability, right? Liability come, yes. So whenever my liability will be reduced, I'll have to debit it, correct? So you already have rightly said the credit bit of the entry. So debit bit, now I have told you the liability will get debited. So obviously your debit side is there, your liability, your credit side is there. You're done with the entry. See this statement as to what is the impact and draft your entry basis that. Okay, see this entry. Now I believe this also you can draft. This entry also you can draft. This also entry you can draft. It is very simple. See what's the impact. This particular amount is increasing my liability, and this is the expense. Debit the expense, increase your liability. You're done. Debit the expense, increase your liability. You're done. Look, you need not to get into those stuff which GL code it is impacting. First, you have to draft your mindset. Okay. First, you have to build your base as to what should be the classification, what should be the entry. GL code we can see that is debatable, but that is totally dependent upon the client, and you can have a debate over the those aspects. Is this particular GL must be used, that particular GL must be used, but you must be knowing the crux of it. Okay. Are GL codes GL codes
Uh,
is not something which would be specific to every entity, Kushi. It will vary. So I can't tell you the GL codes. It's just I'll just share one bit of the piece of advice that in case of OCI, they have certain other GL codes to give impact so that the amount flows to the OCI thing, and for penal bit they have other GL codes. So basis that you can look into it whether the OCI amount is lying into the OCI GL codes or not, and the penal bit is lying into the penal GL code or not. That is what you have to do. Basically, you just have to draft the entry. The concept of it you must be aware of. Entry draft कर लिया, basic entry, you're done. बाद में client से discuss करो कि उनसे जेल में hit देना है नहीं देना, that is something different. Okay. So guys, we have hardly 1 minute in this session. Let's connect on the other session link and continue with this. Okay.